Welcome, y'all. It is your boy Vandal, and we are in here in the studio. And today we've got Success Sundays, where we talk to a bunch of industry professionals and artists of just the coming up era right now, and we get into it. So, without further ado, roll that intro. Welcome, y'all. It's your boy Vandal, and I'm pumped for Success Sundays. Today, we're talking to Brooklyn artist and producer, Brooklyn-based Brooklyn-based artist and producer, Yury. And some of his accolades are co-headlining at Webster Hall, and he's also produced for a bunch of Grammy-nominated artists. So what's up, bro? How are you doing?
I'm good, man.
Yeah?
Just, Monday mornings drinking coffee.
Yeah,
conversation.
You know how it is, man. I got myself some coffee too.
Cheers,
bro. So you just the video that was just playing in the intro, that is your video, Precedent. That song is sick. I love that.
Sir.
So how did that come about? How did that song come about? When did you write that?
Yeah, so what is it? It's May 2018 right now. I wrote that like October 2017. So basically, starting midway through 2017, I kind of took a step back and kind of readjusted my approach to my music. And I know I'm about to like go on tangents and really open up a lot of questions, but basically,
go for it.
I've been making music for myself, which they say, like, if you're a true artist, that's how you want to do it.
Yeah.
But the problem is I was just trying to, like, always reinvent the wheel every single song, kind of always push my flow patterns, the sound and all that. And that's cool, but I always noticed myself, at least even just freestyling and making trap-type beats, because that's what I was just generally comfortable like that. That's what I kind of, came up on. That's what I've always been about. So I kind of took a step back and was like, why don't I try actively making trap music that I like, that's still in my, voice. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how it happened. I was just making kind of a trap type beat, and I was just kind of bullshitting a freestyle over it. Yeah. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse. You can edit it out.
You're fine. Go
ahead. So I kind of like was working on it, and then just started like freestyling a little hook idea to it, and it just all happened very naturally, which is how I prefer to make my music. And it just kind of started with that 808 sound, and kind of this weird ambient type crystal noise, and I just
you're so good at, like you're so dope at making that kind of stuff.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's I don't have classical training. I just, whatever sounds good to me is kind of where I go from. So it's kind of a focus on the taste and, the aesthetic. So yeah, that kind of just came together, and I was just like, word, I think I found more of my true direction. And a lot of it is just kind of like making a lot of music and then figuring out what is your best music, but also your truest music. And, especially with trap music, I was just kind of felt like, oh, it's too generic and stuff. But like, I've always been drawn to, like 808s, snares, trap hi-hats. It's just what feels comfortable to me. It's like genuinely authentic music. So that's what I did. And, it's still different, but at the same time, it's like I'm making trap music, and that's what I am, like alternative trap, So.
Something that I kind of realized lately, something that's really important that I think a lot of up and coming artists can really take in and really like make sure they keep it in their mind. Like a lot of the times people, like back in the day, right, when you were trying to come up before the internet, people had, like, there were gatekeepers, right? So, the A&Rs and anybody who's doing PR really is a gatekeeper to like your success, right? But now, like, you look at Chance the Rapper, he did it all by himself. I mean, he has his squad, his team. Yeah. But you don't need anyone's permission to put out your music, or you know what I mean, like anymore. So as long as you're staying true to yourself, whether that's rap or trap music or R&B or just some other weird stuff, like there's gonna be a market for you. You just have to find the people. You just have to connect to it. But without, my brother was on a phone call with Atlas from Illmind's team, and he was saying the same thing. He's like, dude, you got to put it out. Nobody knows that you're there. You just got to put your music out. That's the only way people are going to know you're there. You know. So if anybody that's up and coming that's watching this, you want to make sure that you're definitely putting your stuff out. You definitely want to do that. Obviously, make sure you're putting your best stuff out. Don't like if it's not about putting out quantity, it's about putting out quality and consistent quality, you know? So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No, 100%.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude. It's crazy. So you were born overseas, right? Belarus.
Yep.
Right? So what was it like growing up there?
So I was born in Belarus during the Soviet era.
Mm-hmm.
And then it collapsed when I was like an infant. So we moved to Israel when I was like 2 or 3 years old, so I didn't really grow up there.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, my parents were kind of looking for the better life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Eastern Europe, post-Soviet bloc was, you know, look into your history books. You'll know what it was about.
Mm-hmm.
Moved to Israel. The Gulf War happened. My parents were not trying to raise a child in war.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So we moved to Toronto, Canada when I was 4. That was pretty cool. You know, I had my childhood there, if you will.
Okay.
But then abruptly, halfway through 5th grade, we moved to Little Rock, Arkansas for a couple years for my mom's work.
Mm-hmm.
And then moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right before high school.
Yeah.
And that was like very pivotal for me because I grew up in, you know, Pittsburgh. It was like a true city, kind of like Toronto, but it was like an American city. I went to an inner city public high school.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that really helped me as a hip hop artist because the music I was listening to and the way I was dressing, I was in that genuine environment. You know, nothing against people, you know, like, you know, this is probably going to ruffle some feathers, but nothing against like suburban artists, suburban rappers, if you will. But if you like, you're a product of your environment. So
totally. Yeah.
I'm very happy that I grew up, you know, in a true, you know, inner city hip hop culture, basketball culture. That was like, you know, that was everything. You know, mixtapes were, you know, literally disc mixtapes were coming from New York City. People that would visit New York would bring them back to Pittsburgh and burn them. This is when, like, obviously the internet was flourishing, but we didn't even have Dat Piff yet. It was like icy hot mixtapes. I mean, just shit like that. And, you know, it was really hard to find new music. So you're literally looking at these almost esoteric, obscure Harlem rappers who might only have like 10,000 listens. But, you know, if you were from the Northeast, you were one of the cities that kind of had, you know, access. So I really do feel like that was very major for me. And then I moved to New York in March 2016. So I've been here since then. And it's been cool. It's been cool.
Word. So did you play basketball when you were younger?
Yeah, I mean, I love basketball.
Oh, dude, me too.
Yeah. I went to summer basketball camps. You know, I was like deep in it. I had the like one VHS mixtape.
Oh, dude, oh my God, so sick.
Deep, bro. Like even the secondary players, like you know, like I think it was like Black Widow, and all these like players. I was into it, like Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, like OG, like street basketball meets NBA. And then I stopped growing, so...
you didn't get tall enough.
I wasn't tall enough, and I mean, it was cool because I think no matter how hard I tried, I think I would have never... No, that's not to say I would have never made the NBA, but, like, honestly, my innate talents were better suited for music, so, like, you know, being cut from the basketball team in 9th grade, you know... 10th grade was when I was like, wow, like, I got cut. But it was cool because, like, I mean, we were inner city, like, Taylor Holidays, you know, I'm sure you've heard of that high school. Like, that the year that I got cut, you know, we had, like, 3 D1 potential players on the team. So it's not like, you know, I didn't take it personally. It was just like, damn. You know, obviously, there was some political bullshit if we're going to discuss it. You know, I was shorter, but I played really well.
Right.
One story I will say, I worked my ass off my senior year. and I was doing really well in tryouts.
Yep.
I came from Canada, where they have you start school a bit earlier than in America.
Yeah.
So I was a 16-year-old high school senior. I was 16 in high school.
Oh, so you're younger, yeah.
Like up to 2 years younger. And there was another player trying out that was very comparable. He was like a couple inches taller than me. He was 16. I think I was a better overall player.
Yeah.
But he was a freshman.
Yeah, and you're a senior.
And that made me, like, those are the kind of, like, things you kind of learn as you start growing up, where you're like, that's just how life is.
Yeah.
And that was one of those almost, like, lessons where I was like, you know what? Like, it is what it is. Like, don't take it personally, because if the roles were reversed, the coaches would have picked me. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was all, like, and obviously he was cool people on team and, like, a lot of political bullshit. But, yeah, I was really into basketball, and I still am.
Same. Yeah.
But, torn rotator cuff on my shoulder, wrist surgery, if you can see that little scar.
Oh, yeah, I see.
It's like that, and it's like, I'm glad I moved on, and now I exercise for the health benefits, not, not for basketball's sake. So yeah, man, I was really into basketball. I still am, but, like, I gave myself, like, knee tendonitis and knee bursitis just playing basketball.
Playing so much on blacktop and playing, like, just running on, Dude, I know. Yeah.
Having flat feet without having orthotics. And then
same.
Braces. I mean, it's just, like, you don't know these things, and then...
Until it's, like, already happened, and you, like, have to, like, figure it out, yeah.
Exactly, so... Yeah, man.
Yeah, so what kind of student were you in high school then? Like, were you, like, the, like, quiet, creative type, or were you, like, kind of outgoing?
So... freshman year, I really wanted to do well. I was all about trying to get to the Ivy Leagues and all this.
Okay.
So I got into the gifted program, which you have to test into. So, not trying to humble brag, but the point is I was in a gifted program.
Yeah.
But I also wore what was not even called this yet streetwear. So I was already into, like, streetwear apparel and, like, wearing oversized basketball jerseys and
I remember that.
So I was kind of in this weird, like, kind of, in between, where honestly, like, I'm gonna keep it real, like, the kids in the gifted program, they looked at me different. I was called, like, when Eminem made the word wigger, like, I was called a wigger because I wore baggy clothing and, like, listened to hip hop. But I also was in the gifted program, so it's like I wasn't fully accepted by them. And then, I'd have class with, people in gym and all that I could actually relate to with basketball and hip-hop, but really didn't, relate to them as far as, like, having class together, because they a lot of people, like, didn't really care about school. So I was kind of a toss-up. And then by grade 10, I just started staying up late, playing video games. The typical high school life, and then I just kind of coached it through high school. Like, I barely got a 3.0, and weighted was like a 3.2. But with minimal effort, you know how they say that. And I started to become jaded, but I was like, all right, fuck high school. College is where I'm gonna, like, really excel. Went to college, became extremely jaded. Realized everything was rote memorization.
Yeah. Where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to college?
I went to undergrad at University of Pittsburgh, and I wanted to be an investment banker simply because of the money, not the lifestyle. But I started college right when the subprime mortgage happened, which is the mess, basically.
Oh, yeah,
the banks collapsed. $1-billion companies just disappeared within weeks. So that was kind of a sign that I never belonged there. And I think this is going to start being a theme in this interview, but, like, I feel like I was always an outcast, and I would never try to be an outcast. It's just, like, when you move when you're 2 and then 5, and English was my second language, but now it's, like, my main language, but I started speaking English when I was 4 and 3, and people are like, oh, I could notice, and, like, for the record, no, people can't notice that English is second language. They just like to demean you, if you will. And then, I started making friends, and then halfway through 5th grade, which is probably one of the most brutal times to move, I moved from Toronto, Canada, this beacon of multiculturalism and, hyper-liberalism, if you will, to Little Rock, Arkansas, where there's still blatant segregation, black and white segregation, and white people judged me for not having a Southern accent. Yeah. So I always felt isolated in that way. And then, you start becoming friends with people, mind you, halfway through 5th grade, and then I left after 8th grade. So I only had three and a half years to really make relationships. And then right after high school ended, middle school or whatever, 8th grade, I moved to Pittsburgh with 2 weeks' notice.
Yeah.
So I'm starting from scratch again right before high school.
Yeah.
And I just always felt like I couldn't relate. And, some people are like, oh, well, it's me and I'm different. It's like, I wanted to fit in. I wanted to make friends. I wanted to connect.
Yep.
And I just couldn't find the people that I related with. And granted, I have a couple friends from high school, and one really good friend.
Yeah.
But that's like, when you move around so much and you are always feeling like the outsider, I always wanted acceptance and I never felt like I got it. And now finally in my 20s, late 20s, I stopped giving a fuck.
Yeah.
I genuinely stopped giving a fuck, and it came from bitterness and resentment, and it turned into genuine, what's the word? Peace.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I definitely feel that. I think for me, the way I relate to that is when I was in high school, I think a lot of people knew me, and I knew a lot of people. I had my friend group. And I noticed that a general theme in my life was when I was coming up, I always had a core group of friends that I always hung out with, right? And this is going to sound really bad, but at some points when I outgrew my friends, because that always happened, I wasn't so heartbroken about it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because I realized that I can relate with you, because I always didn't feel like I really fit in. I always felt like I was set aside, different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that I was my thinking was a little bit more mature than most of my friends at the time. At least for trying to get better at stuff and success and all that. So
absolutely.
Obviously when I was a kid, but
yeah.
So I definitely agree, and I definitely can resonate with that. Yeah, because once you get to a certain age, you realize, once you get out of college and all that, you realize that the world doesn't really give a shit about you. You have to make them pay attention to you, So
sure.
Yeah, so it's definitely something that's pretty crazy. So what was it like for you when you came to, let's say not America, but Canada for the first time from Israel? How old were you when you were coming from?
I was 3 going on 4. Yeah, about 4. So
okay, yeah. So you probably don't remember it as much, or?
I actually do remember it. I remember my family not having money, and my dad has a master's, and my mother has a doctorate.
Oh man, okay.
To a new country, it really, it didn't matter because they didn't weigh it, same way, an American degree. So my mom had to go back and retake all her exams in English. So I grew up with my dad, who was actually a renowned poet in, the Russian-speaking world.
Oh, wow.
He was in an anthology of the 100 greatest poets.
Wow, that's crazy.
Part 2.
Do you think that's where you get your writing skills from?
Yeah, I definitely get the artistry from my dad and my mom. I mean, she's just a hard worker, extremely smart. I'm grateful. My family didn't have money growing up, but we always had education. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I definitely, and it's funny with all these, I'm not trying to play the victim card, but I had all these disadvantages, but everyone will bring back, well, you had educated parents. And it's true. My parents showed me what incessant hard work can get you.
Yeah.
And just an example is we got into Canada because of my dad's music. Basically, you take an entrance exam, but they're Canada's all right, you want to immigrate, what do you bring?
Oh, wow.
My dad pulled out his guitar and just started playing, and they accepted us. That's a true story. He just started playing in Russian, singing his
that's so crazy
tunes, and Canada values artistry, and it was wow, this is true artistry. We want people like this. And we grew up. I grew up very poor, mainly hand-me-downs.
Yeah.
We're working class, lower class.
Okay. Yeah.
and my dad's moving furniture. He's like this world-renowned poet, and he's moving furniture because that's the best job he can find the entire time we're in Canada. Yeah. Well, my mom goes to, school again.
School, yeah.
And, I'm, in school, obviously, as a child, super hyperactive. So I didn't really notice we were poor until my parents started making better money.
Yeah.
And my parents started making better money when I was in high school. So to fast forward, my mom finished all her residency and all that when I was entering my freshman year of high school. So freshman year of high school is when I stopped wearing hand-me-downs. Grade 10 is when we first went to TJ Maxx and I was able to buy whatever I wanted. And for those that don't know TJ Maxx, like discounted clothing, new discounted clothing.
Yeah. Kind of like Macy's now, but a little bit like it's actually discounted.
It's like the discount version of Macy's. Yeah. So I remember that. And then I remember by 11th grade buying myself Louis Vuitton. So I went from being so poor and not knowing to like realizing, holy shit, there's all these levels of wealth. Mm-hmm. So that kind of perspective, again, like I'm really trying not to sound pretentious, but like I really don't think, and I've yet to meet someone who has a comparable comparison or perspective on life, because I literally went from lower class to middle class, like just barely middle class, like lower middle class to, upper middle class. We're not like balling by any means, mind you. Still living in rentals and all that. Yeah. So I really think that kind of perspective, like at times, like I feel sympathy for like Yury, the child growing up, and now like I'm a hardened adult, if you will. Yeah. So it made me who I am, but like I really do feel for kids that had to have gone through things like me that maybe wouldn't have or didn't make it through, without some sort of like emotional trauma caused by it. And I'll be honest, I am definitely insecure, and my anxiety is always high. And I'm sure my upbringing played a role. Yeah. But at the same time, I think about the people that might have ostracized me or, whatever, wanted to be cool. Like, now they're not doing shit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or they're adults and they don't matter, you know?
Yeah. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, your success is dependent on you and how you move and what you decide to do and your choices that you make. As much as our parents definitely play a role in like our mindset and definitely the way that we work and have, like, I think honestly for immigrant parents, like, and immigrant kids, I was actually born here, but my parents were, they immigrated here. And definitely I think there's something to say about having that kind of chip on your shoulder because your parents are immigrants, because they definitely know what it takes to actually work hard and like really like have to do it, Yeah. So for something like that, I definitely think it's like something. I think it's something that only you can get from an immigrant family. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. And absolutely. It's crazy. I was gonna ask you something else about that. Forgot it. So anyway, so when did music come into the picture for you?
Honestly, it's been around since forever. I remember one of the best things that happened in Toronto was it's so multicultural. They have their version of MTV is called Much Music. It's the same thing. Okay, yeah. But in Canada, there's a province called Quebec. Quebec is predominantly French-speaking, so they have Much Music, which is the French version of Much Music. And once a week, they would play the French music channel stuff on Much Music. Yeah. Obviously, Quebec, French, very heavily tied to France. Where am I going with this? Daft Punk was just starting. Okay. So when I was 7 years old, I got to see Daft Punk's Around the World on TV. We didn't have Google or anything, so I didn't hear that song again for like 4 or 5 years. I was like 6 or 7, and I heard Daft Punk, and I just knew that this was great music. There's just something about it. There's this music video, and they're all like just wearing like these skeleton glow-in-the-dark outfits, and they're just dancing on steps, and that's the whole video. Yeah. But the music was just on another level, and I just remember hearing that and never forgetting where I was. I was at my childhood friend's house in front of his TV. No one was around, and I'm just like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. And then that same, in that same time span, Biggie's Dead Wrong came out. So I heard Dead Wrong by Biggie and Daft Punk's Around the World within the same, year, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's funny because those are still like some of my biggest influences now. And it's like, even as a child, even though I had like minimal experience with hip hop, minimal experience with electronic, I knew that was, legendary music. And I feel like it just kind of permanently latched onto somewhere in my, nucleus accumbens where I was like, oh, this feels good to hear this music.
Yeah.
And it was very serendipitous. And I feel like that still affects, my music to this day.
So do you think Daft Punk then is that when you started doing like hip hop, or did you start trying to play around some house stuff, or how did you start? What did you do?
Sure. So I was 7, obviously not really capable of much. When I was 10 years old, I remember right before I moved to Arkansas, Eminem started happening. So I was like 10, 11 when Eminem came out. And I remember I was like, I want to be a rapper. I remember having a rhyme book when I was 10 or 11.
Oh, wow.
And I remember one of my lines, it was something high fidelity. I remember even back then I was trying to use big words.
Yeah.
And I picked up the words high fidelity there was a John Cusack film called High Fidelity. And it was about, I think, vinyl music. So it was like, again, very serendipitous that I learned these words.
Yeah.
And I was writing it, and obviously you can't, like, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but, like, I didn't have the internet. I didn't have money, so I had very little access to create my own music, like you would today, where you can literally download a trial of Fruity Loops, get a $20 microphone, and just record. I didn't have that. But I remember, writing these lyrics. Then when I was in high school, so around 14, 15, I was already in Pittsburgh, and I remember going to a music studio, and it was just some, like, I mean, let's be honest, it was just some old white dude who mainly does rock, and didn't know how to make beats, and we tried, like, making a beat, and he didn't know how to quantize, and it was just complete trash. It was a waste of $50 an hour for, like, 3 hours, and then I kind of gave up again for, like, 3 years, because, I wish, again, that was another situation where if just one hip-hop engineer kind of was like, oh, this kid wants to at least try to make music, who knows where I would be.
Yeah.
And again, I'm trying not to play the victim role, but I remember these very specific situations where, like, man, all I needed was just one fucking person to help me out. Just one person. When I was 10, when I was 14. Yeah. And then when I entered college, I started recording at the studio, where Wiz Khalifa also recorded. And I went to high school with him. I actually had, like, a couple, gym classes with him, so that was very funny. Yeah. But he started making noise in Pittsburgh, started going to the same studio. And, I was paying for recording, and the engineer that I started was terrible. Yeah. I paid him, and he still was late or flaked. So, again, I, like, kind of gave up or dropped it for a couple of years. And, I'm in college, so I just learned about weed, so I'm smoking weed and just listened to, like, Lil Wayne mixtapes for, like, a whole year. Like, that was for a year. Yeah. Like Lil Wayne at his heaviest drug use. Me and my homies smoking weed. Out of blunts, we just discovered Swisher Sweets. Horrible for you, but that was me for an entire year. And then I finally got back in the studio, and there was an engineer who, as sad as it sounds, like, he was good because he did his job. I paid him, and he recorded me. Right. And even that was kind of difficult to find back then. This is like 2008, 2009, and still, like, super hard to find somebody. So I started doing that, and, over the next couple of years, up until 2012, 2013, I was recording and things were happening. But just, like, I always had these, like, grand aspirations of, like, I'm working on my music so I can become a famous artist. I'm trying to work. Let's meet up. Let's record. I'll pay people for beats. I'll pay people for mixing. Even then, I learned the lesson that even if you're paying someone, even if you're passionate, you got to understand not everyone's on the same page. Yeah. Everyone's going to believe in you, and that's fine. So I took a step back, and I became my own engineer. Yeah.
So how did you start learning? Like, what did you do in that way?
Honestly, it started with, being in the studio enough to kind of understand, like, obviously hit record, chop takes, double your layers, like super basic stuff that you can find on YouTube now. Like, anyone be good. And then we'll repeat this, but, like, the difference between, like, a successful artist and a not, obviously, some luck and some talent, and then the rest is just a disgusting amount of hard work and actual application of your efforts. So I started, from that, just started recording myself, and bought a mic setup, and it was cool. It was like a Bluebird. It was decent, and it was sounding okay, but I just wasn't. Like, I wasn't happy with it because I know the quality level that I could have attained.
Right.
Like, I'm always, like, even though I was an amateur, quote unquote, I was always comparing myself to, at this point, Drake obviously is already big.
Yeah.
So I'm comparing myself, like, how does this sound in comparison to a Drake? Like, literally.
Yeah.
At this point, I already noticed that even, like, shout out to Biggie and Pac, their sound recordings aren't anywhere near as good because, I mean, it's just lack of technology in the early, in the 90s.
Yeah.
So even then, I was like, I understand what good quality sounding music was like. So I started, almost like hamster wheeling, just running and trying to make as much stuff, reaching this proverbial ceiling in Pittsburgh of like, lack of drive, connections, lack of network, lack of basically every opportunity you can think of to make it. So I was like, I want to go to grad school for music engineering.
Yeah.
Again, it was just very serendipitous. I was working my ass off and randomly stumbled upon this program at Carnegie Mellon University, one of the top universities in the world, but they had a 1-year program for audio recording and production.
Yeah.
And I just called and inquired about this other master's technology program, and they're like, well, what are you looking into? And I'm like, well, I want to make music. And, obviously I explained I want to mix, master engineer. That other program was 2 years and more on the technical side. So if you want to build microphones and speakers, which zero interest in, they're like, but there's a satellite program, obviously still in Carnegie Mellon, where you take all the core classes, then whatever other classes you want in a condensed year. So it was a year, but it was like a year and a half worth of classes.
Yeah.
And they're like, you should meet the professor and, owner of the studio. And this is like a multi-million-dollar studio at Carnegie Mellon. They record orchestras and, renowned opera singers and even indie rock people come to record there. So I walk into the studio. I'm high out of my mind off of, wax oil is popular then. And I had a buddy who was sending me stuff from Portland.
Yeah.
Wink, wink, that didn't happen. But, I don't want to incriminate myself. Like, this was years ago and not true. Asterisk. But I was high and I walk in and he talks to me, and he was a really great guy, and he was like, what have you been doing? I'm like, I've been making my own production, kind of learning my own mixing, recording myself, mastering the stuff. And then he told me about his program, and then he was like, so the year starts in 3 weeks, but I think you're a strong candidate, so you should apply right now. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I did, and I went from, just getting high every day and making music, which, again, it was worth. I don't regret that. That was a part of the process. I'm a very, OCD person, so I needed that kind of, like, weed to zone in and just work my ass off.
Yeah.
And then I started going to grad school at Carnegie Mellon University. I had to wake up every day.
Crazy. Yeah.
And that happened because I just kept at it. It wasn't efficient. I was not making productive music every day, but I was working on my craft or always listening to music, or even just back then just Googling and following people's social media and following the scene and really understanding that while also being a part of the sneaker culture. A side note, I made a lot of money selling sneakers.
Yeah.
So basically, once my parents bought me my first pair of Jordans, I wore those for a month and then sold them for $100 profit. And that's when, a light bulb went on, and I was very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
So I was like, wait a second. I understand this immediately. There's scarcity and fashion and hype. So buy the shoes and sell the shoes because other people want the shoes and they've sold out. And that turned into me being an eBay power seller and selling on forums. And I was on this forum called Babe Talk.
Yeah.
Back when, I forgot what he used to go by, but all right, so basically, Lupe Fiasco released his first mixtape and promoted it on this forum.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was there, and I remember Lupe Fiasco was from Chicago. Back then, he had cornrows, he was wearing a Babe hoodie, and he was rapping about gangster shit.
Yeah.
So that's how deep this goes. So I remember being a part of that because of sneaker culture. I remember seeing Tyler the Creator's first videos on, hype beast for him in Beta, back when he was like talking about like weird, like kind of very fucked up subject matter for the shock value.
Yeah.
Back when Wale was on this forum called Nike Talk, and it was so surreal because they were just regular people that were in the same stuff as me.
Yeah.
But they're using these platforms to get their music out.
Yeah.
And obviously they were in Chicago, New York, and, you know, DMV for Wale.
Yeah.
So they have more opportunity. So even these little things that are just intangible in the sense of I was able to see these things that most people have no idea even happened.
Yeah.
And kind of see how they were able to rise. So
do you think that entrepreneurial, because like now you're doing like, you're running Yury as like a business now. So,
absolutely.
So the stuff that you were doing with the sneaker sales and being part of those communities, how do you think that translates to like Yury? Like how do you, did it just like kind of happen? Like that's just the way your brain was working, or?
Yeah, it's just kind of like, again, I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but you kind of learn people just aren't on their shit. Like,
yeah.
Literally, like people are still wondering, how do I become successful? It's like, honestly, just do the work. Just
yeah.
fucking work. And
yeah.
And people are spending, you know, thousands of dollars to go to seminars to see these successful billionaires.
Yeah.
That really, all they did was they just worked. And you know, luck comes, but you have to create the opportunities to get lucky. And I've blown so many opportunities,
Yeah.
You know, to be famous,
yeah.
to make connections. And I've learned from that. But at the same time, I put myself in those situations, and I can get back in those situations. So with that said, it was very easy to kind of translate this work ethic or even just this perspective from selling shoes to the business end with music, because I just saw it work. Like, you know, once you see it, like the biggest mental block is just starting. Once you see it, the wheels in motion and see people make things happen, the rest is just like keep doing it.
Yeah, that's so important. Just to start. Like it's so important.
Yeah.
People think like right away it's gonna click for you. That's not how it works. That's not how the world works at all. Even people like Justin Bieber, Martin Garrix, they were working for forever before they got like, you know, their break. And you know what? Things like that have to line up with your connections. Everything has to line up, and you have to have those things. You know, so for people, especially anybody watching that's like young and up and coming, you have to remember that without doing the work, it's not gonna happen. So first of all, you have to work to get good. So you said you were recording so much, like, and just recording, just to get yourself good enough to like to be able to be received by people. And then you went to college for it, and then you like, you know, so you're still working. And even now, like, people think that if you look at Laid Back Luke, that dude is traveling all the time. And he vlogs about it, right? He's always working. You have to think about it that way. People that are business owners, like Grant Cardone, who's like a big real estate guy, and he's got like a business where he sells like, you know, his stuff. But even he's always working. Like not to the point, but he is at the point where he's trying to minimize the time he's working, but maximize how much his money is working for him, which is great business strategy, you know? So it at the end of the day, anybody that's starting, and this is what Success Sundays is for. It's for the people that are trying to do this, that maybe need some motivation or inspiration. Like, you got to know that everybody that's in this is like in it 100%, and you got to want it bad enough, and you got to work hard for it. Because you know, like you said just now, like there's so many times where you had opportunities that you probably passed up, you know, and I know I've had some opportunities that I definitely passed up, but that's because not knowing, you know, you can't really know. You try to make the best decision with what you got, but at the end of the day, we're still working. You're still making music. I'm still making music. Everybody is still working, you know.
Right.
So starting is like the hardest part for some people. Once you start, it's just if you keep working and pushing and growing, it's a snowball, you know.
Of course.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say is like, if you like were able to put people's efforts and work into like numbers and statistics, my workflow and just my efforts were extremely inefficient. Like trying to write, mix, produce all this at the same time was the equivalent of like carrying all the groceries at once. So you know, let's say you need to go 100 feet to your house. I was going slower because, you know, somebody might be carrying one bag. I'm carrying all the bags at once.
Yeah.
And it was inefficient. At the end, you know, this person might have gotten his one bag into his house.
Quick,
and that might
right.
be, you know, let's just say he's just a producer. I got all these bags and it's taken me longer, but I got all the bags in the house. And it's kind of a funny metaphor, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I learned to do all these things all at once at different skill levels, but now I can say with a straight face, I am professional and competitive as a artist, writer, producer, but also a mixing engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Mastering, I'm still like, you know, let's be honest, mastering is a whole nother beast that I'm okay at, but it's like, even that, I've reached a level where I understand, like, that's a nuanced skill that I'm okay at, but I'm okay not being the best. All this other stuff I'm trying to be the best at, and, you know, eventually get some guy with, you know, $100,000 speakers to master my music. So, it was inefficient, but one thing I will say is, like, you have to be realistic, but also aware of where you are in that process. So 4 or 5 years ago, I knew I wasn't, like, commercially digestible, but I knew where I was going with it, and I needed to make those songs at that time to get to where I am right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have to understand where you are and be okay with that. You know what I mean? If you're only able to run a quarter of a mile, but your goal is to run 1 mile, when you are able to run half a mile, it's not that and that's not a failure. It's like, that's progress, and you understand what you have to be realistic. All right, I can run half a mile. Remember, I just doubled my endurance, and I have to double it one more time. Yeah, and that's what it just comes down to. So to add to doing the work, it's just like, you got to keep going. Yeah, and I read all these self-help books. I'm really into fitness, as you are, and it's about just like, you got to keep going. And there's, you know, there's so many cliche quotes, but they're cliche for a reason. One's like, you don't have to start over if you never stop. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that's been my approach.
So do you definitely think that, I agree with you saying that most of the time success is not a short road. Success is a long road. It's a long play. So how important is having a dream and having a vision to you? How important is that?
Super important. I just have. Sorry, one sec.
Sure, no problem.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I've always had incredibly high ambitions for myself. That's one thing where, like, I remembered, you know, growing up and, like, kind of, like, losing that childlike wonderment, but then trying to bring it back. And then I've read quotes about how, like, the artist is the child that didn't lose their childhood vision or whatever. And that's one thing I remember. I always wanted to be great. Mm-hmm. I remember being a child and wanting to be an astronaut, finding out that people land on the moon, and I wanted to be the first person on Mars. Mm-hmm. I have a fear of flying, so that's probably not going to happen. And, like, it's not an attainable goal as far as, like, the work needed that I would want to do anyways. Yeah. But so when I was a child, I wanted to be an astronaut that was the first person to Mars. I wanted to be a superstar when I was like 10 or 11. I always had these great aspirations. You know, at one point, I wanted to play in the NBA. When I was, when I was a freshman in high school, I'm like a year younger, like a year and a half. So I entered high school. I was 13. Yeah. But LeBron James was a senior, and in my head, I was like, if I make varsity and we do really well, I could play LeBron James. Like that was, but I wasn't like, oh, I want to play LeBron James and where's my belt? I was like, if I do well enough to make this varsity team, and this varsity team makes it to at least state level, because Pittsburgh and Ohio are similar, there's a chance that LeBron James' team and my team could meet. Yeah. And obviously, like, the odds are against you, but I was able to rationally put together what you need to do. And that like makes a world of a difference. And obviously I'm crazy enough to, like, believe that shit, and I put in the effort, and, you know, no regrets. I busted my ass off, and, was really good at basketball, and in the end I got, a good cardio in, and, better to have been addicted to basketball than finding, weed and cigarettes in high school like a lot of kids do. You know what I mean? So all of that was just a part of, my growth process, but I've always wanted the most out of life because it's such a finite experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how I always have been.
Do you think?
Sorry, continue.
Well, I was gonna say, do you think the way you grew up, like you said, you were like barely lower middle class, and then the way you grew up, do you think that definitely plays into the fact that you want more, for sure, or is it like you never thought that, you never thought that it was impossible?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't realize that we were poor till we were no longer poor, which is honestly great for my parents to do. You pick up things here and there. Like, I remember, God bless my parents, I had, $20 allowance a month. So basically, I could buy one toy a month.
Mm-hmm.
Transformers were popular then.
Yeah.
Back then, that was a lot of money for my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. $20 when you make, $800 to $900 a month, and you have a child,
and
you have
rent and all that. Yeah.
That was a lot of money, and they still made room for me, So I never felt, that difference till I was already an adult. And the irony is, I knew people that I won't call my friends now, for sure, but, in high school and then college, I was selling sneakers, and my parents were doing well, so all the money I made, I could just spend on clothing and sneakers, and, I was making great money for a high school kid. There were months where I made a couple thousand with no expenses. When you're 16, 17, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I would, share the wealth with people, and especially in college when I discovered weed, I would smoke out literally a dozen people. Yes, 10 to 12 people come over and smoke for free, and they're like, "Oh, I got you with $5 or whatever" later, and they never did.
Yeah.
But they always judged me and saw he was a rich kid or something, even though your family was richer than my family up until now, and even now it's comparable, because don't forget, my parents bought their first house, not straight up, but got their first mortgage when I was a sophomore in college. Yeah. So that was in my childhood home. I grew up living in rentals my entire life. The apartment I live in now in New York City is as big, if not bigger, than the apartment my parents and I first had when I moved to Pittsburgh. Yeah. And I'm in Brooklyn, so this shit's expensive now.
Yeah.
So I always and again, I'm gonna keep saying this because I've had people kind of, assume that I'm playing a victim role, but I'm not playing a victim role. I was judged for, oh, now he's a rich kid, even though it's bro, I was so poor. I was born with literally, I'm an anomaly. There's no reason that a child born in Belarus that was Jewish, mind you, there's anti-Semitism. I'm not even Jewish by religion. I'm just, Ashkenazi Jew, which means I'm an Eastern European of Jewish descent.
Yeah.
And there was anti-Semitism. The Soviet Union collapses. There's literally no money. And for me to make it to America and then chase my dreams, that's the epitome of an anomaly. It's statistically impossible. It's a rounding error. It asymptotes down to 0%. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's so crazy. That is nuts when you think about when you started the trajectory from that point. When you were born, that's so crazy. It's such a big difference from now and then. It's it's nuts. So it's just a blessing just to be able to chase your dream and be alive and come out of the war trodden areas and come to America. And I feel like a lot of people definitely in different countries have a certain view of Americans and all that stuff. So I know that for a fact from going to India and all that. But here, it really is something different. And the fact that your success is totally dependent on you, and this is anywhere in the world, but the fact that it's totally dependent on you and what you do and how big your dreams and aspirations are and how hard you work to get them is pretty crazy, especially with your story coming from that point. See, this is why I wanted to interview you, because I know your story is nuts. It's crazy. And the outlook that you have on life, especially with the thing is, I notice a lot of successful people understand themselves, right? You definitely understand yourself and your journey and what you've gone through. That's the only way that you can actually find the motivation to get through to things. You know, understanding yourselves and then understanding what motivates you, understanding your goals and dreams, right? So that's a big thing for me too. I wasn't so introverted when I was in high school or growing up or anything like that, but I definitely always had this thing where I looked inside a lot, you know, and really try to understand myself. That's something that's really important that's overlooked, because most people try to look around at their friends and like compare and then like try to react to that. But you have to stay true to yourself, because that's the only person that's going to be responsible for your success is yourself. I heard, going back to the dream thing, I heard a quote, I think it was from Les Brown. Oh man, he's flocking. Look at the hair. It's so, I wish I could grow my hair like that. I just never had the commitment to do it.
Step one, don't get haircuts.
Don't get haircuts.
That's it.
You save a lot of money too. I heard a speaker called Les Brown, and gets me so pumped up. He said, if you want unreasonable results and you have unreasonable dreams, you have to do unreasonable things in order to get to those dreams. So, exactly. and if you think the dreams are impossible, then you're not going to get them. You have to understand that they are far-fetched. But as long as you know they're possible, you can do it.
Absolutely. You know? And, you know, just going off that, like, things are impossible till they happen. Yeah. And it's like, people aren't connected enough to these things to understand them. Like we went to the moon, and that took like hundreds of people. It was brilliant. But like before it happened, it was like not even like remotely possible. Like it was like not even a thought that this could be like in physics terms attainable. Yeah. And now we have phones that are more powerful than what they used to get the moon.
For that. Yeah.
Yeah, and like people, and that's another issue. Like people hear these things, and it's so easy to say, "Oh yeah, I went to the moon." It's like cool, and then how do you internalize that feeling? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. How 100 years ago, everyone used to die from malaria and all this stuff, and it was like there was no vaccinations weren't a thing till 100 years ago, maybe 200, not even. But and now it's just such commonplace that people take it for granted. It's like you don't understand. Like you have to get to this point that's past your, not even just past your comfort zone, past this threshold that you internalize as even being plausible.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think a big thing in that is like having the imagination. Imagination is so important because you could think just even going to the moon, that's just nuts. But think of someone being, 5'6" or 5'4" or whatever, and dreaming to dunk a basketball. Just thinking about that's not that high. You know what I mean? Then you have Spud Webb.
Exactly.
And then you see it's possible. There's obviously a drive and motivation that comes from that. And especially in music, dude, there's so many examples that we can look at, that, and even just success in general, there's so many examples that you can look at that people have done stuff. You know what I mean? And it's possible. And I think something that was really important for me, especially when I was training to be a basketball player, because I tried out and I made my freshman team at my high school. Then I transferred to another school. I didn't get to try out there. Then I tried out when I was a senior, almost the same kind of story. And the coach was like, "Yo, you're really good. What grade are you in?" And I said I was a senior. He was like, "Oh no, never mind." And they went to win a freaking state championship that year. It's all good. Wow. They were all my homies, so it was all good. I wish I could have played with them, but yeah. So I forgot my train of thought, but going in that and just understanding that it's possible for me to be successful at basketball. I've seen people my height, that are successful NBA players, it pushed me to work harder. And then that translated right into music because I saw that there was no physical requirement. There was no you only just had to be good at music. Yeah. And you didn't need training. I've seen people that, and I've been lucky enough to meet some people like Afrojack and DJ Snake and just some of these people and from them, hearing from them saying that you just got to keep pushing and work harder and keep working hard and keep chasing it. And hearing their stories, like it definitely solidifies the fact that it is possible. And that's all I need to know, that it's possible. That's all you need to know when you're trying to come up. And it's, and one thing that is important too is to know that it's not easy doing it, and it's important to know that with your business mind, that's such an asset to your success. Understanding just simple cash flow is so important. You don't have to know like the music business per se. I mean, you should. I mean, I think everybody should, because then you won't be leaving any money on the table. But definitely having a business mindset and an entrepreneurial mindset is really important in these days, because once you start being a musician, it really isn't just the music anymore. You've got to have the full business plan because it's a business. And yes, it's a fun industry because you love to create and you're creating what you love and you get to put it out and see how people respond. But at the end of the day, you're selling a product, and that is your music and that is your brand, so you have to think of it that way. People that are coming up, anybody that's watching, you guys have to think of it that way.
Yeah, spot on, man.
Yeah. So what do you think? How can someone who's just starting out achieve some success, like in music? Because even you and I, we've got some successes. You've written for some Grammy Award or nominated guys, and you've experienced some success with some shows playing at Webster Hall, which is a shame that it's kind of changing into something else now.
Yeah.
But
it shut down like a month after I did that, which is crazy.
Wow. Well, that's good that you got to grace that stage. That's so awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
I always wanted to play the main stage there, but I always played the side.
I did the second. There were 3 stages. I did the second largest, not the basement. So I made it to the second stage, but not.
Yeah.
Back to your question. Honestly, I feel like even if a high school kid heard what I'm saying, it won't resonate till they get to that point themselves. Kind of like you don't realize you're at rock bottom till you hit it, or but for the people that are willing to actually internalize what we're speaking about right now, just start and keep some sort of track of what you're doing. That's it. Like literally, if you just try to make a full beat, just literally make sure you have a melody and drums. If it's literally just, all right, so honestly, just make a melody and then add a clap, and you know what BPM you're in. That's like 50 seconds of work or whatever. You know what I mean? Even that will take you further than not doing that. So it's like these these small victories. And my problem was I was never satisfied with those, and I learned to appreciate that. Kind of like you just have to understand what your long-term goals are, and you have to understand, or at least be aware of what you're even attempting to do to reach those goals.
Yeah.
Because I used to fall into that trap of, let's say, for example, working out. When I graduated from college, I had a lot more free time.
Yeah.
And I made money selling sneakers, so I didn't need to get a regular job.
Yeah.
I woke up whenever I felt like it, ate, a healthy, smoothie or whatever, just threw vegetables and whatever, and just I was already looking at the hip-hop block, so I was like working by finding, discovering new music, and then I was fully rested, well-fed, and then I would hit the gym. And I remember like deadlifting 250, 260.
Yeah.
And not being satisfied. I'm like, okay, cool. This is now my base threshold. It's not like I just changed something crazy. It's like now this is the minimum. And that was not a healthy mindset, because that's how I hurt myself. I've injured my back 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, not permanently. But it put me out of commission for even a month at a time, sometimes, from working out, because I just pinched something in my back from getting too cocky, or just like not respecting the process, being like, oh, I did that last time, so this time I go into the gym without all these preparations, without warming up, I need to pull that weight again. And that translates to anything, and in this case, music. You're not always going to make the same hit or this as good of a song. Always strive to be better. But you have to have like empathy and love for yourself. And again, these are cliches for a reason. These are things that I'm still learning and I'm still struggling with. And I will say, even now where I am right now as I'm talking to you, I have my own idea of like tunnel vision. Yeah. I'm not where I want to be yet. Mm-hmm. And the past, like, I'd say 5-6 years, I've just acknowledged, don't even stop, just fucking, like, I hope to one day snap out of it, but I feel like I've just been in this weird tunnel vision for the past 6 years. Even though I'm completely cognizant of this, I'm still in a tunnel vision where it's like, I can't stop, I'm going to keep working, and I probably, even if I reach some sort of, arbitrary level of success, I'll keep pushing. Yeah. I might even be satisfied and might be even more jaded than I am right now. But that's what I feel is really helping me keep going, is just that desire, that drive. There's just something inside me that always wants to create and grow and build and, like, essentially become immortalized. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's this book called The Denial of Death, and, I skimmed it and read this other self-help book that talked about this book, but it said basically two things, and this will get really heavy, but people generally, you either do or do not reach this realization of your mortality. So when you reach this point where you're like, I will die at some point, and you have this feeling, and a lot of people put that away for the rest of their lives. There's other people that try to either rationalize it or explore that, and most people do it subconsciously, but that's what, as this person called it, comes your immortality project. Mm-hmm. That's why people want to be Hall of Famers. They want to have statues built. That's why wars are fought to get super, because people want to hold on to, existence in life, even though they're aware that their physical body is going to go away. Yeah. And I'm personally, sorry to get even deeper. I'm an agnostic, meaning that I don't necessarily believe in the existence of, God, but I don't deny it either. So to get more specific, I'm a theist agnostic, meaning I believe in a God, open and speculative about what it is. So to me, we exist, whether we're a simulation in another world, or the Big Bang created it, or literally a long bearded white guy created, you know what I mean? Whatever created, and whatever is the reason that we're here right now. There's no denying that. At least for me, I am observing this. We're here for reasons. So whatever is the reason that I'm here right now is God to me, and God is just a way to put, verbalize what it is that created us. So you're taking all of that and all these perspectives, and that's how I make music. Going from that perspective and take all that and internalize, and then from there, then I approach the music. Mm-hmm.
And so, it's understanding that, like, which is really cool. Something that you said that's the reason why you make it. And I think this is what I believe, that all the talents that we're given, that we have, are given to us. You know what I mean? And it's our calling, and it's our purpose to cultivate those talents and make them better. There's a because I'm a Christian, right? So there's a verse in the Bible that talks about God giving talents, or a guy loaning out talents, like money, to people. Mm-hmm. And 3 different guys, he gives 3 different amounts, and then one guy buries them, one guy what does he do? He kind of makes a little bit of interest on it, and then the other guy really, like, double, triple, like, he really does, like, makes it go a long way. It's the same thing. Like, it's the same thing. We're given certain things, right? And it is our duty to make sure that we multiply them, that we grow them, that we make them, use them to the full advantage. Because, like you said, nobody knows when they're gonna die, but everybody has that thing in the back of their head. You're not here forever, you know. So I definitely think that, for me too, like, that's what kind of pushes me, because I don't know about being immortal, but I definitely want to leave a mark, leave a legacy. That's something that's really important. I definitely want to be remembered for something. So what is something that you want to leave behind when you're, when it's all said and done here? Like, what do you want to leave behind?
Honestly, it just comes down to, in the most abstract way, creating something that either hasn't been done before,
Yeah.
or express myself to my full capacity and potential, which I think almost no one really achieves.
That's deep. That's really deep. That's that's got me thinking too. Yeah, that's crazy to really think about, like, cause you really think about it, like everybody that's, at least in the music space, you're always trying to push yourself, push your music, push your, your creative thinking in a way that's, that's better than the last thing you did, always. Yeah. And,
exactly.
I don't think anybody has ever sat back and said, yeah, I achieved that, even the greats, like maybe Michael, like, I don't know.
And that's what I'm saying. People like Michael Jackson, for example, didn't, they were born into a situation where they were forced into some, and he had a very tumultuous and frankly unhappy life. So that's not worth it either.
Yeah,
and then there are people that literally go their entire lives just focused on surviving paycheck to paycheck. So I've been granted so many opportunities off the work of my parents and my ancestors. For me to not pursue and push this would be selfish.
Yes.
Also, pursuing this is one of the most selfish things you can do, but it doesn't have to have a negative connotation. Because I know that if I don't pursue this to my full utmost capacity, then not only will I resent myself, I will create a level of disdain that might live on forever.
Yeah.
If you have a child before you've hashed out all your attempts at becoming, an artist or whatever your dream is.
Yeah.
And there's even a twinge of resentment that passes on to your child, that's gonna snowball.
Yeah, you don't want that. You don't want that.
And that's one of the things I think about. It's like, even like, my parents aren't set at all financially right now.
Yeah.
And I moved cities, and I can't even help them with the most basic stuff like mulch. My parents can't my dad has a bad back. My mom's, she's a small lady, and they have a yard, and they want to keep it nice, and like, I used to come and drive to Home Depot and get like 20 bags of mulch and do that for them.
Yeah.
But now I don't even do that. And that kills me inside. But at the same time, my time is more, we're going to have to get a little close that my time is better used right now creating art that may not be the next hit single, but developed to create that.
To pushing,
going to Home Depot in Pittsburgh and getting mulch. And those are the sacrifices you have to make. And taken out of context, somebody might scoff at this or laugh at me for saying that, but that's some heavy shit, man.
Yeah.
My parents and I moved continents, all of this, and my parents just want to see me happy and succeed, and they can't even see that. All they can do is talk to me on the phone or even look at my social media.
Yeah.
And I keep that in the back of my mind. Time is finite. Time is the one thing we never get back. And I'm spending this time by myself in a fucking studio in Brooklyn trying to make it in an industry full of a bunch of sociopaths with minimal empathy to help them. And I have to keep that sort of perspective the entire time.
Yeah.
On top of that, I have to get into these meetings and get with people that have zero sensitivity to my art, and I have to go with zero ego.
Yeah.
But I've accepted that that's where I'm at, and I don't get to choose the rules of the game. I can only choose whether or not I play the game, and I've chosen to
play it. Yeah.
Play the game.
And you have to learn how it's played. You have to learn how it goes, learn how the rules are, and then once you get to a point where you have leverage and all that stuff, then that's when you can like bend those rules, because without leverage, there's no, you got to make sure you have leverage. So what's something you wish you knew when you started out? What's something you wish you knew?
Honestly, Logic. I wish, like Logic software. I wish I knew about the software and had the ability to sit down with it. Mind you, when I first started wanting to make music, like I'm literally like 10 years old. Google is not even an idea yet. You know what I mean? This is the late 90s. And maybe Google's around, but like, I do wish I just, like these kids now have it so easy and they don't realize. At the same time, I almost feel for them because they don't understand like analog in the sense of toys. Yeah. And that grows your imagination. You're literally on a screen with an iPad. You you're playing a game where the rules are constructed for you. You can't break those rules. Where with blocks, people literally create worlds with just colored blocks. You understand?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I do wish that I wasted a lot of time where, man, and I'm even wish maybe somebody would have helped me along the way when I was younger. But then again, I might have only been living by their rules.
Yeah.
So I tried a bit harder, just a bit harder in
to find stuff,
high
right?
school and high school, just learning to make beats or just like learning to record, because I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's a amount of experience thing.
Okay, yeah.
So if you started busting your ass off at 13 and you needed 4 years to become, professional quality musician, then you're a professional quality musician at 17. If you start at 25, you're going to do that at 29. And obviously you're smarter and wiser, but sometimes that free creativity you have when you're younger, it fades when you're older. Or you're like me, and you start seeing people your age and your contemporaries start drop off like flies and getting quote-unquote real jobs or giving up. Yeah. And then people even looking at me like, the funny thing is, like, I feel younger now than I did when I just graduated from college. Because I finished college a bit later. I was 22, going on 23. I took an extra year and switched majors and all that because, the financial markets collapsed. So I'm glad that happened.
Yeah.
It was serendipitous to help me make music. But just kind of like people, like, I remember being 22, or sorry, even 23, and going to a college party, and like people like are so insecure that like this one kid called me like almost like insinuating I was too old to be at a party. Mind you, one of his friends was older than me by like half a year, but there's this kind of like insecurity thing, and like they knew that I was always dressed fresh and had cool sneakers, so it was better for them to belittle me than just like be cool with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Irony is, it's like, bro, the guy who mocked me was like a year and a half maybe younger than me, and now I know where these people are, and they're not doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And there's people younger than me and people older than me that I've confronted in this industry that have fucked me over. But now I've realized, wow, I'm reaching a plane and a perspective and an experience that they don't even have an idea of existing.
Yeah.
I know that sounds abstract, but basically let me try to solidify. It's like, I've worked with producers and engineers that are older than me that have had greater commercial success.
Yeah.
But I realized, like, that was just the luck of the draw, and they've plateaued. They will never break past those things, and I'm not going to say names, and I'm not trying to, shit on them, and if they see this and it helps inspire them to make better music, great. But I know that what I'm trying to do is, it's on a level that I don't think has been reached before, and that's, take it for how you want it, but, like, I'm calm, struggling to pay rent, throwing all my money into this music, my team, and it's fine. I'm extremely calm given the circumstances. And that's a tunnel vision thing,
Yeah.
And I find ways to cope. If I'm too stressed, sometimes I say fucking. I mean, I smoke weed, but like sometimes you smoke and just get to the music, even though you're suppressing the stress and the anxiety, because you need to. Kind of like if you're like a war medic, and I know I'm getting crazy with the example, but like your body's telling you don't go out there and save the guy who just had to have his body blown off, but you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And I'm using that because on a less extreme scale, that's what a lot of this is. It's just pushing through the stuff where your body physically locks up, and you're literally using your consciousness to push past what your physical capacity is.
Yeah. So how important then do you think it is to fill yourself, your mind and stuff? Because you read a lot of self-help books and stuff like that, right? So how important do you think that is? Like filling your head with like success, like just kind of like with the positivity and the success and like believing in your dreams and all that stuff. Do you think that helps you to that point to push through the tough times? Or is it understanding really what your dream is, and really being able to understand yourself? Which one do you think is what really pushes you through?
I think understanding yourself, all that positivity and all that, it can help, but it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of the best art comes from tormented souls.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you want to live a happy life of fulfillment and artistry, you have to find that balance. But I don't think you need any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Some like, you know, some of the best music I've made was in a depressed state, but I've learned, like, I also don't want to be in that depressed state, so I found ways to not be in that state and still dig deep and create, you know, most genuine, authentic music. You don't need any of that. It's just the application.
Yeah.
If you want to make music, then you have to just make the music. If you want to be happy while making it, then yes, now there's so many different variables, and maybe you eat better and develop healthy relationships and meditate, or, you know.
Yeah.
But most books I read, they're almost the same thing, man. I'm literally like I got this book called Awareness. Haven't even read it yet, but I want to read it.
Yeah.
This book's about death. I want to read it. Then we got the homeboy Benjamin Franklin, and he only worked like hard 4 hours a week, 4 hours a day. But that's all you really need. You know what I mean? Like, never compare yourself to other people.
Yeah, your journey's different.
Yeah, and that's what I learned. Like, instead of, all right, I got to work for 8 hours a day, it's like, now, some days it's like, I make no music that's of quality. Like, I always mess with music, but, like, sometimes it's like, I spent 5 pure minutes of making true art, but I made 5 pure minutes of true art that these record labels couldn't manufacture.
Yeah.
They just couldn't. And you just have to be, honestly, you just have to be honest with yourself. I know when I'm, like, lying to myself or blocking myself, because that's what you need. You need, like, you know, especially in, like, war times, and, you know, I'm using the example because they're a lot easier to, you know, explain, but, like, you have to block certain things out and focus on, you know, survival or something else, you know. If you're afraid of, you know, the Nazis coming to kill you, you probably should focus on finding a place to hide for 8 months versus creating a new sonata.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But by staying alive, you can make that music. You know what I mean? Like, you have to...
It's perspective.
You have to figure that out. And sometimes I've been making music, and I've been getting on a roll, but I've been lightheaded, dry mouth, no food, no water. And I'm like, fuck it, just keep going. And if I'm damaging my body a bit, so be it. Because in those situations, if I get up and go take a piss and then go make some coffee, I've lost that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it gets like that. Sometimes I won't eat like the whole day and just be like, man, it's already 9 o'clock at night. That's crazy. Yeah, dude. That's definitely when you get in the zone. Definitely when you get in the zone. So let's do this. So we'll do like rapid fire, like one word. I need one word answers. I'm just going to say some words and then just tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Okay.
Only one word?
Only one word. You can only answer with one word. Okay. All right. So, favorite food?
Healthy.
All right. Good. Childhood hero. Could be 2 words. Could be a name. Childhood hero. No.
Shrug.
Say again?
Shrug.
Okay, cool.
Sorry. Yeah.
All right. Peace.
Undervalued.
All right. Yury.
We'll see.
Success.
Arbitrary.
All right. Sweet. Well, dude, you know, it was dope. It was dope interviewing you. And I definitely love the way you're thinking. What's something you can leave here, like for people that are just trying to start out, just like one thing that you can leave for them to kind of give them an edge in trying to do music or any creative endeavor? What's something that you can leave for the guys on the channel?
Sure. Whatever it is you're doing, take a mental note of where you are, and then attempt to build off that, and just be honest with yourself whether or not you're actually doing that. So with music, listen to music you've made, and then try to make more music and just compare the two and be honest about it. Mm-hmm. If you've yet to make a full song, just download a program, a free trial, and look at where you are with downloading it versus like, you know, not. And look, I'm not perfect. I have all these post-it notes of things I need to do, but I remember like that there's this rare fleeting feeling I felt when I've been actually doing the things that I want to do on a deep esoteric level that very few have achieved. So I'll say, like, take a mental note and just a true mental note of where you are and what you're attempting. Mm-hmm. So it's not just about doing the work, but you have to be aware of what you're doing. Just don't be mindless. So that just at that, be aware.
For sure. Yeah, that's really important. Be aware, yes. And definitely understand where you are. That's so important. All right, Mel. Thanks for watching, guys. We're here with Yury. I have all of his links in the description. I'll also link the video to Precedent somewhere in the video. It'll probably be linked a couple of times in the video, actually. And then I'll have a bunch of his stuff in the description below. Thanks for watching. Till next time. Peace.
Yeah. Yo, thank you. Also, if you want to hit this, but thank you for the interview. Really great questions. Like, it's almost like cathartic sharing this, and like also like I understand that you will bring value to this because, you know, like right when you sent me an interview question, I was like, all right, I'm gonna, like, yeah, as you can see, I just went unfiltered.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be. And even as I'm talking about it, I'm internalizing it. So yeah, man, thank you. And
totally,
you know,
dude.
I think you're also really onto something because I've listened to like the Tim Ferriss podcast, and that's great. But like, you're also onto something. So just